Pacers basketball is back this week. Can you believe it? They played preseason games twice this week. We've already seen the NBA returns, plus notes out of training camp, including Charis looking very good here on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a new week and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News. And joining me this week, once again, because we're going to continue to knock out 5 shows together a week for one more week, my lovely co-host, former Indy Corners writer extraordinaire, Mr. Adam Friedman. Adam, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Getting excited. We're 2 weeks away from actual games. We're going to have some real basketball this week. It's finally time for the offseason to be over.
Yeah, we're rolling. I'm pumped. I mean, we got to watch Nets Lakers today, the JV teams for both teams, of course, but that will not be the case for the Pacers. We'll get to that momentarily. But yeah, the NBA is back. It's really crazy. A year ago today, I guess for those of you listening on Monday the 4th, was NBA Finals Game 3 for the 2020 NBA Finals. It's crazy how much has happened in a year. So quick note for all of those of you listening via normal podcast audio methods. This is our first episode on YouTube. If you want to watch/listen to Locked On Pacers and see our beautiful faces, we're on YouTube. So if I sound like I'm pointing at something, that's because I'm actually looking at myself on a camera. You can see us every week, every day. If you go to the Locked On Pacers YouTube page, go check that out. It's going to be awesome. It's a new adventure for us. But today we're breaking down preseason basketball for the Pacers. They have a real game tomorrow against the Knicks in New York. What to watch for in preseason? What are we watching for? What's important stuff for this team? And we've kind of touched on a lot of it as camp has started, but we've gotten more information. Actual games are different things to watch than in camp. Carlisle's influence on this team will start to become more relevant. So we have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Pacers in camp, and we've come up with a few things we're watching from the team in the games this week, plus some other notes from camp, because I've been at practices all week long. I can tell you some stuff about this team. So Adam, give me something that you are going to be watching for from the Pacers in these preseason games.
Well, I think I'll go with the most obvious one, or probably one of the two most obvious ones, and that is the rookies, obviously. We will probably get we'll get a healthy dose of Duarte and Jackson, I assume. I probably 20 plus minutes of each of them, just because I don't imagine the starters will play after the first half in either game, frankly, unless there's some reason to. Maybe to close it out. So yeah, the rookies are where I would start.
Yeah, that's the big one, right? Because we don't know how they look against NBA competition. We've seen Chris Duarte in Summer League, and we've seen Isaiah Jackson in Summer League, and they both look great, and both are drawing great reviews out of practice. That said, they're going to get great reviews in their first ever training camp, of course. This isn't some shocking revelation, but
yeah, we've talked about it before. Has a rookie ever not been the best at something, really high valued at his pick? I'd be shocked if a coach said, "Oh yeah, we drafted this guy a month ago and he's terrible."
Well, actually, it's funny you say that, because this weekend I was reading about Doc Rivers taking some, not digs, but criticisms of Tyrese Maxey in his second ever training camp. I was like, wow, the rare against the grain analysis out in Philly from Doc Rivers, which I thought was funny. But yeah, I mean, we've seen, for me in practice, they have this bell thing. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but they do the shooting drill at the end of practice. You shoot 5 threes from 5 different spots, so 25 total. If you make 20 or more, you get to ring this bell. And Duarte, I think, has rang the bell every single day we've been at practice. Players have been raving about Isaiah Jackson and his defense and his athleticism every day. And while in the regular season, these guys, Isaiah probably won't be in the rotation. Duarte probably will be, especially given their injuries. In the preseason, they'll definitely both be playing in most or all of the games. So it'll be a good opportunity to analyze how they look against NBA competition. And then we don't have to rely on, the stupid training camp quoterisms from players and coaches being like, yeah, they look great. They're some of the best rookies I've ever seen. Instead, we can actually say, look at that. Chris Duarte looked very comfortable against NBA players, or, oh my gosh, he couldn't do anything but catch and shoot, or wow, Isaiah is really as athletic as they say, or his defense is as advertised. Some guys have talked about him defending 1 through 5, which is unheard of in the NBA. If he can do that, he should be in the rotation, right? So what level are we getting from those guys? It's probably not only the biggest thing to watch in camp, but it's the biggest takeaway from camp could be how that influences the rotation and stuff like that. So not preseason games, excuse me. So the games will change how you think about those guys and will probably impact their season the most.
Yeah, and I think with the game, especially, we'll see if Duarte is at the pace of like NBA basketball, right? I think we saw in preseason he's pretty much in the top echelon of whatever we call the rookie crop, right? He pretty much dominated in his summer league games. So is he right at the pace? Does he play at the speed? Does he move quick enough to actually play with NBA players? We won't see it a ton, but I wouldn't be shocked to see it if he's playing some minutes with a couple of starters here or there just to see what it looks like for a little bit. And then with Isaiah Jackson, it's just, what does he show right now? He's young, a lot of raw talent, obviously probably not even fully developed for, being 19 years old, but like, does he show something that's interesting in the preseason that he can build on going forward?
Yeah, anything from him would be a plus for me, right? They've called him a project this whole time anyway. So if he looks like he's got something that he can do right now, great, awesome. Play him sometimes, I guess. And Duarte, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily like a hope for them that he's NBA ready, but they've all said a few times, someone, an exec, a coach, a player, whatever, is like, he's older, he's more experienced, he should be more ready to go. If he's not, that's a little concerning. So those evaluations will be important. Another thing that I had on my things to watch that's sort of roster related, I think is adjacent to this that I want to bring up is the roster battle at the end of the roster.
That was my number 2 thing. Like when I said I had 2 obvious things.
Yeah. So this is kind of rookie related as well, but who's going to make the team is something we've talked about in camp for forever. And again, we can go round and round about what Rick Carlisle thinks of these guys, but that might not matter, right? If they go out in games and Keelan Martin is awesome and he's making all his threes and he's hitting shots off the bounce, he's going to make the team. Reminder, he's battling Kiefer Sykes, who is a point guard who they apparently like. J. Michael, the Indy Star, reported on that. And the big thing there is behind Brogdon and McConnell, they have nobody at point guard. Charis can kind of do it, I think, as a thought from this team, but that's still a low ball handling depth. Sumner getting hurt certainly hurts their depth in that way as well. So the thought is maybe Kiefer Sykes could make the team and stabilize that rotation. And they have Dejan Giroux on a 2-way who could, in theory, be their emergency point guard. And boy, does that guy have some energy at practice. He is dancing all the time and yelling and running around. And he looks like he's going to be an energy player for sure. But, if you can't rely on him necessarily. But Sykes, you never know what you're going to get from him either. He's never played in the NBA either. So seeing how Sykes does, how Giroux does even, how Martin does, how every Exhibit 10 guy fighting technically with Martin for the last roster spot, though I would say it's mostly between Martin and Sykes, how those guys do in an NBA game with NBA players against NBA players. And especially if it's something repeatable they could do in the regular season when it counts, that's a huge thing to watch in these games.
Yeah, I wonder if Sykes has the most kind of potential of any player in the back end to actually get a starting job, right? That doesn't already have it. I was not a starting job, a roster job. I'm sorry, a roster position. Because Martin, I think, kind of already has it, right? Let's just say he's at least the favorite of those like 5 guys that they bring in on Exhibit 10s plus the 2-way guys, whatever. That Sykes is probably the only guy who probably has a real chance to challenge Martin for that spot just because of the need base. Unless I'm like one of those other Exhibit 10 guys just like completely pops out of nowhere, I'd be surprised if anybody else gets that last spot, either Martin or Sykes.
Yeah, I agree with that, except for the maybe unique is the right word. The scenario where they love a 2-way guy and they decide to convert the 2-way guy and then give Sykes or even Keelan a 2-way, where it's kind of a demotion for them, but then they could get the guy they want on the roster full time. So they're always traveling with the team and stuff. But they might value the reps. I mean, all those guys are young. Sykes on a 2-way, for example, he's 27, makes a little less sense than Giroux, who's only 23, I think, who you want the G League reps and development for. So it's another option. I'm not saying they'll do it, but it's just another option if someone really stands out. But that's just another thing to watch, right? If Giroux is awesome, it's another consideration.
If they want Sykes, they probably just got to put him on the roster. I mean, he's too old, and there's not really like a value in having him for like just 45 days or what is the 2-way now this season?
Well, now you can play every game as a 2-way guy. They altered the rules last year because of COVID.
Oh, they did because of COVID. Okay, so but that's still like
or 50 games. I think it's 50 games is what it is.
Right. So you probably just, if you're gonna have Sykes, you probably just want him on the roster. Not like he's gonna make that much more. Right. Like you can probably pay him the bare minimum that he gets at his level, right? Like you don't have to worry about having to overpay him a little bit. Like he'll take the minimum because he doesn't have a roster spot right now. So I'd be surprised if Sykes is a 2-way guy. But I could the Drew Martin scenario, I'm sure, is probably out there.
And the other small consideration that's probably too minute, but something to consider at least is Cutting Martin and keeping Sykes as your last guy saves them about $800,000, which they have some tax concerns, especially with bonuses, and every little bit helps. Maybe that helps them. So that would help Sykes to me. So if he's got a good camp, I think he's got a chance. But I think Martin would have to be pretty bad to not make the team. Kevin Pritchard alluded to, Martin being the favorite, but also he'd have to push back his guarantee date to probably make the team too, because if he gets cut, if he's not willing to do that, they don't want to fully guarantee his deal, I'm assuming, if they're going to have a battle for the last spot anyway. So there's some flexibility still to be tackled for the Pacers. So still some stuff to figure out there. And in these games, one of them standing out would be the deal breaker that finally makes it obvious what they should do. So if none of them stand out, it still might be tough, but we might get some clarity in these games.
Maybe Sykes just a leverage play by the front office, right? Bring him in, challenge, make him be like, oh, we could just go with him to Martin to push his guarantee date back to sometime in January.
That's always possible. That is always possible. There's a lot of options and stuff to consider for the Pacers. We still got to talk about some other stuff to look out for and notes from camp. I have a lot because I've been crazy and watching way too much of the Pacers practice. But first, we got to talk about two awesome groups of people. The first group is the great folks over at Sleeper, because Sleeper realized one day that fantasy basketball was broken. Games are being won and lost based on which person had more scheduled games that week for the guys in their roster. It made no sense. Didn't make any strategy. You just put in the guys who played the most. So in 2020, Sleeper said, let's do a different way of playing fantasy basketball. It's called Game Pick, and it's only available on Sleeper in Game Pick. Owners pick a single game per week for each starter to count towards their team's total score, ensuring an even number of games played between opponents. You don't lose anymore because your players have less than the other team anymore. You don't have to do mindless busy work, counting games, looking at the schedule, and all that nonsense that I had to do in the past. Giving up halfway through the season because of all that work, it's over. Go play Game Picks on Sleeper. You'll have way more fun playing fantasy basketball. All that adds up. More strategy, less busy work. Whether you play Redraft, Keeper, or Dynasty, Game Picks has you covered. Sleeper cracked the fantasy basketball code. Go check it out. If you play fantasy football, they've got that too. I use it on Sleeper, and it is excellent. Best way to chat with people in your league, to me, straight on the app of any fantasy place. Or if you prefer building out a weekly strategy versus daily busy work, you're going to love Game Picks. Download the Sleeper app. Start a league with your friends today. You will not be disappointed. And of course, let's also talk about the great people over at DirecTV, because does this sound familiar? If you're like me or Adam, you've got one device that lets you catch the game live. I was watching the WNBA playoffs on my phone today. Another that lets you stream your favorite shows. I watched Bones on my TV for dinner using my Xbox today. Sports highlights on your phone. For me, it's the iPad. And you've got your friends log in for the good stuff. Well, there's an easy way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and that is DirecTV Stream. It brings you live TV on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. Get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Okay, there's still a lot to get to and talk about that we're watching in these preseason games in New York tomorrow. Unbelievable that the Pacers are already playing another game in Cleveland on Friday. 2 road games. Malcolm Brogdon mentioned a pretty good way to start. They can get some bonding on the road, really get these rookies some travel time to get stuff going. So Adam, can I go first this time? I've got some stuff.
Sure. I would say the guys can enjoy New York City, right? That's always a fun time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you're a rookie who might not make the team or make a team ever, being able to travel to New York for a preseason game with an NBA team's got to be cool, right?
Yeah.
Good way to spend your day. So I had the rookies in Keelan on my list. I only have 3 more, so we'll just knock them out in this segment. Something that's been talked about a lot in camp. I can see this from where I stand for my media duties. We can see Goga, Domas, and Miles shooting a ton of threes after practice. A ton of threes. It's like all they do. They've had various coaches rebounding for them today. I think it was Calbert Cheney. I can't remember who it was earlier this week. But anyway, Miles has been talking about this is a 5-out offense, right? They're going to like a lot of 5-out and a lot more transition. Malcolm today, Sunday at practice, talked about how, the way in transition that they're doing it now is instead of getting it to a guard like last year with Bjorkgren, they played really fast last year, but they'd get it to a guard and then push, or Sabonis. This year, whoever rebounds is pushing, or they're hitting it ahead a lot. They're just trying to go quicker up the court, get into their stuff quicker. So that's we don't know what the offense is going to look like. We can kind of look at Summer League and the Mavs last year and these quotes and figure out, okay, I kind of got an idea of how sets might start or how they might get into stuff after playing defense. But we don't know what the team's going to look like. And that is a huge thing to watch in preseason. It sets the notes, for how they're going to play in the regular season. They're unscoutable right now by other teams, even in the regular season when that starts. How they're going to play matters a lot in influencing how good they can be with the roster they have and how they're going to play. They have kind of a misfit group, how a new coach can try to get that unit to work together.
Yeah, the 5 out thing is interesting. I think did you tweet that earlier this week? Somebody did.
Scott was the first one on it.
Okay.
Yes, you wrote a whole story about it, I believe.
Well, I like to give original sourcing, of course.
Scott Agnes.
I don't know how much we'll see in the preseason games, but that'll be interesting because Turner is one of him bringing up the ball will be, or if he even pushes it even a little bit, be interesting because he will probably be the guy that get a decent amount of rebounds depending on how they run the defense and how much he's pulled from the hoop or whatnot or pushed away. But because I think everybody else on the starting 5, like you'd expect, can bring the ball up at least a little bit, right? Sabonis needs to get better at it, but that's kind of like his next level in his game is to sort of just become that push player, right? If he can become kind of
bringing it up last year is funny because it was either an automatic bucket or a turnover every time.
Well, in between. And it's very right. The center push thing really started with Draymond Green. I feel like that was kind of when it first became a thing when he's like, that was the Warriors' secret success, or part of their success at least, was that Draymond could just rebound the ball and push the floor and they would just run this ridiculous pace and have all their shooters open. And so I'm interested to see if they could do that with Turner a little bit. But it's good to see at least that all the centers are shooting threes and they're embracing the 5 out, because the only way for Goga to play, which I assume we'll see some with the other centers, is to play with another center. And they can't both shoot threes, that's going to be just a clunky lineup.
Yeah, we'll go to one of yours in a second, but you just unintentionally segued into one of mine, which is what is the rotation? And you only unintentionally segued into it because you said Goga. And Goga, Carlisle, I asked him about Goga on Sunday, and he said Goga's going to play on Tuesday in the preseason game, right? So I don't know. It's not going to be the normal rotation right away. It might be by the end of camp because he mentioned that they're going to kind of ease in starter minutes as camp goes along. But he said Goga's going to play right on Tuesday. So how much do we see of the normal rotation? What do we see of some of the younger guys who might not play as much? We might not get a good read on in these preseason games what they mean for the regular season right away. But, if Goga's going to play, for example, is he actually in the second unit or is he just out there, right? That kind of stuff we can gauge from preseason, how they rank guys, how they feel about guys, and frankly, how those guys fit in the system we just talked about. So the rotation matters as well in that calculus.
Yeah, part of my fear would be Goga shoots really well from 3 in the 3 preseason games and goes back to shooting like crap from 3 in the regular season. There's this fall that, and that's the thing that preseason happens a lot is you maybe get this kind of false sense of a certain player because they do something really good in a game where nobody's really playing defense and they get to the real basketball and all of a sudden it's they're not that good at that.
Remember how good Edmund Sumner was his sophomore preseason? And he was still good that year, but he definitely wasn't as good as he was in preseason that year. And he was getting a lot of hype, premature hype we love Edmund Sumner. He's great, but he wasn't that good then. He just was awesome against the Rockets, I remember, in that preseason.
Yeah, I remember Warren hit the game-winning 3 in India, was it 2 years ago now?
Oh, yeah.
And he really couldn't hit that kind of 3 all season long until the bubble, basically, right? He wasn't really that kind of 3-point shooter, and then he got there by the end of the season. Shot. But yeah. That one was that was a fun game. That was probably the most fun preseason game we'll probably ever watch, frankly.
Yeah, Priyanka Chopra was there. There was a lot of
and they played the starters for a while because there was kind of a big NBA buzz around it. They wanted to put up a real game for the
and they were jet lagged for 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah,
they started 0-4.
That's right. They started up terrible, but that
was a weird season. Don't go. Yeah, that's a thing that's happened to all these teams that go play preseason tours overseas, but that's not a thing that can happen right now. But
yeah, I said that's probably the last time they're playing in India for a little while, just because with all the travel restrictions.
All right, give me something else you're watching in preseason games.
So we kind of hit on it a little bit, but with Carlisle is how much does he show in the preseason versus his regular season kind of style, right? I don't think we'll see a ton, but I think we still might see a little bit of certain things the team is practicing that they're going to have those kind of almost default into, right? Whether it's a certain play or a certain pace they're playing at. I don't think they're going to run all these revolutionary out of bounds plays or this weird brand new sets, but there might be a certain way on defense they're just set up because that's the way they're practicing the whole time, or they push it a little more because they've been doing that a lot in practice. I'll be interested to see what little things are kind of precursors to what Carlisle brings to the team when the season starts.
I'll take a step further. I don't think they'll run anything, right?
Well, so I don't think. Yeah, I don't think they'll run anything. But I would be surprised if they've been practicing some defensive set, let's say, over and over again, if they don't just fall into it one time because it's kind of the default position, and that might be right. We might not see it a ton, or Like I think the pushing thing is really interesting. Like I think we could see that a little just because they've been doing that in practice, and Sabonis get a rebound and just goes, just cuts kind of thing. But I don't think they'll run like anything interesting at least.
Right, I agree with that. I think it'll be mostly simple stuff, and the tipping isn't like as important as it is between regular season and playoffs. But they also haven't had time to instill like everything, right? Like a lot of the focus of camp this week, per the player discussions in Carlisle, has been back to the basics. Because last year, Bjorkgren. It was funny and refreshing at the time to look back on this because McMillan was very vanilla in his sets and his defense, everything. And the defense was good and the offense was not. So then Bjorkgren comes in. He's like, we're going to do all this crazy stuff and run all these plays and run around off the ball and set screens everywhere and push it up the floor and be crazy aggressive on defense and disruptive. And we're all like, awesome. This is great. This is way different. And this will break the stale Pacers and all that, blah, blah, blah. And it was bad. It didn't work at all. So they've been talking about getting back to the basics with Carlisle. So even like you're mentioning with how much they're tipping is how much are they tipping in terms of creativity too? Because it won't be too much like McMillan. We know Carlisle too well just from watching his old teams to know that. But where do they look on that scale? It'll be interesting for me as well.
Yeah, I think the difference between Carlisle and McMillan and kind of why Carlisle is probably on that next tier of coach, although I will probably say McMillan may have actually reached it last season with the Hawks, was Carlisle can be a little bit inventive, but also knows how to adjust to his team and doesn't necessarily have to play the same style over and over again, but will kind of be creative with this team he has. Versus McMillan, kind of what he ran with Indiana, he also used to kind of run in Portland. He used to run in Seattle. Like it's a little bit different, but it was very similar. Like take the first open shot, kind of take what defense gives you, and then we want to play half court defense sets over and over again. Where Carlisle, I think we've seen will reinvent his team year to year based on just the roster if it changes or whatnot. So that's where he will be a little different, I think, than Bjorkgren, which should be good and refreshing, but we probably won't see any of that. It probably like pay dividends until probably late November, to be honest.
How many more things do you have on your list?
I think I have one more.
Okay, do it, and then I'll do my last one.
I think the last one I had was just watching how many minutes do the actual starters play and just seeing what that looks like. Who's the actual like starting five-ish, right? Like does Duarte get the starting spot? Does it go to Justin Holiday? Tory Craig, who knows? Do they do a different one in each game just to see how it looks? Like, I'd just be interested to see who are the starting five for, like, that could preview who's going to be the starting five the first game. Assuming LeVert is there, who's in Warren's spot, basically.
I think it'll be Lamb Holiday in the preseason games.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think Carlisle's talked about mixing it up in practice a little bit because he's not married to that group, but everyone in that unit, all five of them have been like, they've all played together for the last 2 years. So like, yeah, we're whizzing around great. We feel awesome together. Like the familiarity's there. Lamb especially has been like, dude, this group's kicking butt. And Carlisle likes it too. So I think that group will start in the preseason. And when LeVert comes back, Lamb would get bumped out to me.
You don't think they'll give any chance to Duarte just to see what it's like for like a game?
I doubt it. I kind of doubt it.
Okay.
I mean, maybe, he said he's mixing and matching and, that we learned a lot about Carlisle's media this week because it was his first week, talking to us every day. Wheat Hotchkiss at Pacers.com tried to ask him like, hey, you mix and match the lineups today at practice. Like, how did that go? And, you and I hearing that question asked, we're kind of expecting to be like, it went good. We tried this and that and stuff. But Carlisle went with the lawyer answer, just like, yep. And that's it. So we don't really know what he did. And he didn't really like tip it that much. So I think Lamb will start the first preseason game. Maybe it's possible stuff gets mixed up, but just going off of the jerseys guys were wearing, which the color of the shirt they're wearing, I don't think that they were going with the new starting five. I think they just like completely mix and match stuff. Like there was some interesting combos in that. Yeah, but
too, if Lamb and Holiday start, if Lamb ends up surprising expectations, does he end up working away the starting spot somehow?
Can you see the Google sheet, Adam? That's my fifth. That's my fifth thing.
Oh, is it? I have not
my last thing to watch in preseason. How good does Jeremy Lamb look, or bad, after last year and in general, right? Because he was the talk a lot of the offseason of what's his role even on this team? Is he going to be on the team, right? He makes $10.5 million to maybe not play. Should he even be on the team? He's probably not going to have a rotation spot with all these guys healthy. Then Sumner gets hurt. Then Warren gets hurt. Charis is currently kind of hurt. I'll talk about him next segment because I have a lot to talk about with him. So he's got this huge opportunity all of a sudden. Maybe he looks great and makes us look stupid for kind of killing him, a lot this offseason and talking about what his next home could be. And maybe he doesn't look good. And they think about, like you just talked about, starting Duarte over him. And, the consideration there makes a lot of sense. One's a rookie who you're going to have for a long time if they pan out. The other guy's on an expiring deal, right? Who do you put the priority there? It's easy. But if Lamb looks good, you have to think about it a little more. It kind of changes what you think about with the trajectory of this team, especially with Sumner out. So, yeah, how good he looks is very interesting to me. Coming up, he has now a full offseason to recover from the ACL stuff and all the injuries he had last season. So, just in general with him, because we didn't get the full picture of him last season, how does he look, and does that change how I feel about his future with the team? It would be really hard for him to change how I think about his future with the team, but it's possible if he's starting and looks good, I guess.
If he could play really any defense, that
any.
I mean, last year he was a fire hydrant out there basically half the time. But if he could play any defense, that sort of makes him at least somewhat valuable, because I don't think his shooting went away, and he's a good offensive scorer when he's kind of going.
Well, he only had 1 or 2 dribble moves last year, right? He used to be able to get to the elbow so easily. He didn't have that last year. So getting back to that would be nice too.
Yeah, but on the bench doesn't need 10 moves. He just needs to be able
to but it's
open
helpful.
3 and make a move.
Never hurts.
No, it doesn't hurt. But if our expectation is him to just be the 7th, 8th guy, play a little defense and make your open jump shots. That's all you basically have to do to keep playing.
I mean, what do they give up? 5 points a game because he just reaches around and doesn't stand in front of the guy. Just cut out those, and that already improves your defensive rating by 1 or 2 points. So
yeah, I mean, he hit the station with his hand because he got beat up like that. I mean, it was constantly on replay. It felt like watching that.
Yeah, it really was. So he's a big one to me. I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't know if he'll fall behind Duarte or out of the rotation still if he stinks in this preseason on Levert's back, but that's not impossible for him. So he could be fighting for minutes even, which is fascinating to talk about. Between O'Shea, Tory Craig, Duarte, Lamb, one of them probably won't be playing when Charis comes back. So them establishing minutes, and Lamb's the big linchpin there to me because he was not very good last year. He didn't play much last year. All right, let's talk about camp a little bit. I've seen the end of 3 or 4 practices now. I've talked to, I think, over half the team in media sessions, Carlisle every day. I've got some stuff to point out and talk about the team. So let's do that. But let's talk about some other cool stuff first, including the great folks over at Built Bar, because they are making the best tasting protein bars ever. We've talked about them for years on this show. They're 100% covered in chocolate, soft and easy to chew protein bars that are great for everybody. The health conscious guy, the person looking for a snack, a meal replacement, whatever you want. You got to try Built Bar. There's a bunch of delicious, amazing flavors. They even have this mixed box where you can get 9 of their most popular flavors. The double chocolate in there is really good. The cookies and cream in there is really good. And not only are Built Bars delicious, most protein bars are kind of crap. Built Bar is delicious, but they're also healthy. 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing flavors, all tasty, all healthy, and they're the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. It's pretty sweet. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order of Built Bars. Tons of our listeners have tweeted at me and telling me they loved them. I swear I can give you references. Go check them out. Built.com. You'll get 15% off. Check them out. Built.com. Promo code LOCKEDON or LOCKED15. I've been at camp every day. I have thoughts on the things I've seen and stuff about the team. One of them I already talked about that I put in my notes, Adam, and that's Brogdon talking about the speed, the hit aheads, whoever gets it, taking it up at least a little bit. They're just trying to fly up the court. And, they were really high up in pace last year, but Brogdon kind of called it more organized pace this time, which I think is interesting because under McMillan, they were really organized, but they were really slow. So, we already talked about it a little bit, but that balance will be fascinating to me.
Yeah. I mean, last year, I think the pace was to their detriment, to be honest. If you look at
times, I agree with that.
I mean, I think over the past couple of seasons, they've always said the first, McMillan or Bjorken, we're going to play fast. They play fast the first 3 or 4 games, and then outside of last year, they usually are pretty bad, and so they settle into kind of a more slower pace that lets them set their defenses, and they end up having really good defense and kind of an average offense. Last year, they played really fast, had an average offense, and had a below average defense, and that's basically what's their detriment.
I think that last year, when they were mostly healthy, the pace was to their detriment because they have a lot of guys who are better at reading a set defense and breaking it down, whatever you want to call it. But then at the end of the year, when they were really hurt, and they were playing a lot of guys with less experience with set plays or just less NBA experience in general, faster, free-flowing, less sets, move. That was helpful for guys like, Keelan and O'Shea and all those other guys who were playing that normally didn't play at the end of the season. Some two-way guys, Amida. That was helpful for them. So, it's hit and miss, but I would say mostly it was bad for a lot of the season. So I think Carlisle getting that straightened out will be really good. I'm really looking forward to seeing that one. Speaking of O'Shea, we talked to him Sunday. Well, we talked to Carlisle first about him. And something Carlisle said about O'Shea is he's been used most or exclusively, basically, I don't ever want to say always because I haven't seen all of practice, right? But using his words, almost exclusively, almost all the time as a 4. And that's not news, right? O'Shea Brissett's a 4. But because, like I said earlier, between him, Duarte, Lamb, and Tory Craig in that second unit, you're probably going to be only able to use 3 of those 4 guys. If O'Shea's only playing one position, that's a little harder for him. I still think he should be one of the 3 guys that get it. But, then eventually Warren will come back. Then things get a little more complicated. So the fact that he's not playing 3, I don't think that hurts him necessarily, but it does, make you think, okay, I think he'll be the backup 4 and 4 exclusively if they're pushing him into that spot. And to add to that, when we talked to O'Shea himself and he was talking about the system he's playing in and how it's working, he specifically brought up playing with TJ McConnell, who's for sure going to be in the rotation as the backup 2 guard. So it seems like the units he's running with in practice, he is D4 with the backup unit. Unsurprising, mostly, given the context of this team, but because we don't know and because there's some questions about what that second unit will look like, I think we've gotten more clarity that O'Shea will probably be the backup 4, at least early in the season.
I mean, I thought he's going to be a 4. I mean, that's where it kind of like a natural.
Oh, I agree. I just not playing anywhere else, no flexibility there makes it a little more complicated when Warren comes back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he actually could play center, but that would take a lot of injuries, like a massive wave of injuries to like 3 players.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think the 4 is his natural fit because he's basically kind of a 3 and D with a little better defense, a little more size. So it's basically a 4 and D. I think it's what the Pacers need the most. I mean, they don't really have a 4, right? I mean, I guess Craig maybe, but Craig's more like a 3. So really, it's like Turner, who's really more like a 5. Gogo is more like a 5. Like O'Shea is the only true 4 on the team. So that makes sense. They want him to be there because that would be his best shot to be like in closing minutes if he can actually play the 4 reliably.
I agree. It's his best position. And again, when we did our interesting lineup show, we both had him in so many of them at the 4. Just not at the 3 at all was interesting to me, especially because my next note was on Tory Craig, who you just said. Tory Craig has been playing both the 3 and the 4. And that maybe makes me think he could be the utility odd man out of that group because he's been splitting time. But I think at the start of the season, he might be the backup 3 because if Charis is not back, especially, he'll be the backup 3. But if not, he might be fighting for that last rotation spot. We'll see with him. But I mean, everybody's been lauding his defense, unsurprisingly. Obviously, he's very good at it. But he's been playing both 3 and 4 in various units. So that could be the guy pressuring O'Shea for minutes at some point. But also the fact that he's playing the 3 makes me think with Warren out, it will be Justin Holiday starting and Tory Craig behind him. But in his case, again, if he's splitting between the 3 and 4, maybe Lamb's Osman preseason, and then they go Lamb Duarte as the bench 2-3. So Craig's splitting time might give him a chance for minutes if someone else gets hurt, but it also means he's probably behind some guys at those positions. It makes it a little harder for him to get in the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, the Pacers have plentiful 2s, 3s, and 5s. Because they have some guys who can play 2 and 3, either one. The good thing for Craig, I guess, and the bad thing for the Pacers is that they've already lost a 2 in Sumner, so that helps take away some competition. There's 2 injuries to the 2 and 3 right now, so that should help him. But Craig, it's going to be interesting once, if things do get fully healthy, and maybe that means everybody but Sumner, basically, where he falls in. Because I don't know if, I think he might have a better shot at playing at the 4, to be honest, just because it's not as much depth there. And O'Shea could get hurt something like that, or Turner's supposed to miss some games, and that could be an opportunity for him to kind of fill in as the backup 4. Because I think once everything settles in at the 3, they're going to be kind of deep between Justin Holiday, Warren, and then I think LeVert can play a little 3 if they need to.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And Craig, again, could be utility defense to end the game or in the half, whatever. But he'd have to perform pretty well to clearly deserve minutes over O'Shea or Warren or Holiday or whoever. I mean, he's not going to deserve minutes over Warren. But so his role is interesting, but he can play 3 and 4. I think we kind of knew that, but we've gotten it from the coach's mouth, how they're kind of experimenting with those lineups. And you mentioned Charis' injury and how that plays into how they'll finish up shaking out this rotation. Charis is hurt. Carlisle wouldn't really share any updates from the second opinion they got. That said, you can see the video on my Twitter feed if you want. I've seen him every day at practice, shooting a bunch, moving around well, rebounding for his teammates, in a good mood. He was working with Jenny Bouchek, an assistant coach, today on a move to get open in the corner and shoot threes. He was nailing them. He looks pretty good for a guy who's hurt. And the caveat here is that, he did tell us, the day that Woj tweeted this injury out, Like he did media that day, which means it's not that serious. Guys with serious injuries don't ever really do media, or they're not at practice at all. But he did say he could do shooting and conditioning. So seeing him do it isn't like a surprise. But just my note would be from someone who can actually see what's happening is that he looks pretty damn good. So I'm not worried about him missing, if any time, that much time. I'd imagine he can be back by opening night if I'm a betting man. I don't know that though, but he does look and he's moving very well when we can see him.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to rush him though. If he needs to miss a game or two, he missed a game or two. I mean, it's not.
Yep.
It's not like he misses the first 3 games. It's going to ruin their season. It's okay. But I mean, yeah, from your video, he looks like he's, fine. I mean, I don't. It's probably with him kind of a pain management thing. Does he wake up really sore the next day, or like what's the issue with that? And how do you make sure it's not a long-term injury instead of like a 2-week injury?
Yeah, if I had to do notes from guys I can see shooting in general, I didn't type any of these down. One day I remember O'Shea missing a lot of threes, but today he was making a lot of threes. I don't know how to contextualize that. It's also practice. It doesn't matter that much, but they always say a threshold of like 18 plus out of 25 threes is like needed to be considered a game viable shooter. TJ McConnell has been working a lot again on getting a hitch out of his shot. So he starts a little lower in his release, but it's all kind of one motion now as he shoots it. The YouTube people watching can actually see me doing stuff now. So I have the advantage of that on the YouTube screen as we record our first YouTube show. Kiefer Sykes seems to be shooting pretty well. He's rang the bell a lot. Same with Duarte. He's rang it quite a bit. We saw Domas ring it once, which was pretty cool. Goga's hitting threes pretty well. So not many. I mean, it's open threes in practice. So I've only noticed like 2 down days, like I said, but guys seem to be shooting them well. They have to shoot a ton after every practice every day. Isaiah Jackson's doing a lot of free throw work during this time, which is cool to see him get those up. But yeah, it's just fun to see guys shooting and shooting well. Justin Holiday hit 24 out of 25 today. He wanted to get the 25th, but he missed it. So yeah, a lot of that's all we get to see mostly is shooting at the end. A little bit we can hear scrimmaging, but it was cool to hear all that today.
Yeah, we'll see if the shooting is better than it was last year. That's a question.
Harder than McDermott, right?
Yeah, I mean, can somebody fill in his? What did he shoot last year? 30. He ended up shooting 38%, right? At the end of the year. Is that what it was? But
for him, it was less about the percentage and more about the threat, right?
Yeah.
And that's not there. So
yeah, he had like Kyle Korver as threat.
And maybe they'll be a better shooting team. Carlisle seems to have always been at least very willing, whoever catches, to shoot the 3. So perhaps that will be something that takes on a new life this year with the Pacers. I'm looking forward to it. So today we previewed preseason games just in general. Tomorrow they play a real game. I literally can't believe the Pacers are already playing another game. So we kind of saved our Knicks specific preseason preview stuff for tomorrow. Normally for games, we have an expert from the other team come on and talk about them. Kind of pointless when, the Knicks team changed. So we have some stuff we can talk about that's specific to them, but we don't know anything about what they're going to look like in games. So not a real time to have an expert for their team on. But tomorrow we'll talk about stuff specific to the Knicks that we're watching for in game 1 and just general preseason buzz and excitement. And then we'll do the same for the Cavs this week. We'll cover all the topics of camp, but a lot of basketball previews coming for the Pacers because we can actually talk about a basketball game. So I'm excited. You got anything else today, Adam?
No, I'm excited for basketball to start. That's mainly it.
Me too. The Colts won a game. So our discussion of who will have more wins by the end of October between the Colts and Pacers. The Colts finally are in the lead in that race. So Colts fans, congratulations on seeing.
Yeah, I didn't watch the game today purposely because I thought maybe they do better. So maybe I won't watch
it. Are you superstitious about that kind of stuff?
No, I just really frankly didn't want to watch it because they were so bad the last 3 weeks. I went to the game last weekend. It was so disappointing. I'm like, I don't want to watch this team. I would rather just take a nap on my couch.
The Vikings have been bad basically my whole life, and I never watch any of their games. So I'm not superstitious, but I'm just saying the correlation is there.
Well, they lost today too. So
I'm not gonna lie. I don't even know how they played, so I'm not going to pretend to be some football fan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again. If you're watching on YouTube, awesome. It would be really helpful for me. I'm on Twitter at TEastNBA. If you told me that this was your first time ever listening to Locked On Pacers and you found us via YouTube, that'd be sweet. Adam is on Twitter at Friedman5. This show is at Twitter at Locked On Pacers. Again, thank you guys a ton for listening. If you could check us out and subscribe on YouTube. Again, that's a new platform. I'll keep talking about it. Sorry about that. That would be really great. We'll be back tomorrow to talk Pacers Knicks and the start of preseason. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you then.